Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome along to our next instalment. Also, a warm welcome to Joe back into the co-hosting chair and Amy into the background, obviously pulling the levers to make this all happen. I thought that the picture of our cover this morning or this afternoon, pretty relevant, given it actually looks a bit like Joe when he's preparing overnight for these sessions, putting the hard yards in and juggling the kids at the same time, putting it all together. But
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's another busy week, especially now. The rubber's really starting to hit the road when it comes to, obviously, the JobKeeper program, which has been a large part of all our discussions over the past 4 or 5 weeks. For some, it's pretty easy and straightforward, the eligibility test and passing it. For others, though, this is a huge hurdle in its own right. They're in that area of, am I not? I might pass, I may not. Very anxious times. So yeah, just to actually try and get past this would be awesome for those people. And hopefully within the next week, we will get to that point so that people can move on to the more pressing things that need to happen. But really, if you are in that space and very anxious about what it's looking like at the moment, really implore you to reach out and talk to us, phone call, email, however that works. Just another fresh set of eyes and set of thoughts across it and try and get to the resolution of where we need to be. So what are we seeing across the nation? Lots of different things happening out there. More and more talk around the place of easing restrictions in Australia, New Zealand, that sort of thing. Obviously across the world, lots of different things going on. But back here, if we can get to the space where we are going to be easing some restrictions, then that's awesome. That's really going to put our economy in a much better position to move forward. Don't know what that looks like. Pubs open, not open, cafes, restaurants, planes between New Zealand and Australia, who knows? And even just between states, I think it's only going to get more confusing as they have lots of different sets of rules all over the place. But all we know is that it's a large positive move moving forward, as confusing as that's going to get. What can we do, though, is still just control what we can control. Gather our numbers, look at our data, make sure that we're in control of those decisions we want to make, ensure our cash flow is under control as best as possible, and create our own plans so that we can implement the decisions based on that. So it certainly looks a lot more promising than it did 4 or 5 weeks ago when we were possibly looking at full lockdowns. Hopefully we're going to be staying away from that altogether. Which means we're just getting closer to that other side of coming out the other end. So today we're probably going to focus mainly back on the JobKeeper side of things, but before we get into that, the usual housekeeping points. If we can put any questions that you want answered into the right-hand side into the chat, put those in there, that'd be great. We'll try and get to those later on. If we lose connection, simply refresh the page. We'll come back again. And also there'll be notes, handouts, that sort of thing distributed throughout the session and also be emailed out later on. So I think that probably does that for that, Joe. Once again, we'll probably take our heads away as we get into the bigger section of it and come back in the Q&A part. But anything you want to add to that, Joe?
Yeah, probably just that. And we'll run through the structure here. But the back end of the structure or the Q&A session. Last week we did a bit of I suppose, a frequently asked questions at the start of the session. I think that worked quite well, and we've got good feedback around that. So we're going to continue to do that with some of the things that we're hearing or questions we're getting on a more regular basis. So we've got a few questions ourselves, but please feel free, as Brian said, to add further questions in. We haven't got heaps of updates to go over today, so we're going to have heaps of time for questions, and more than happy to answer them. And just a reminder, whilst most of them will be around JobKeeper, any other questions around any of the government stimulus or anything else, please feel free to ask that. That's what we're here to answer. Happy to take the questions on. So as Brian said, what we're going to cover off today is a very brief recap on JobKeeper. It's going to be briefer than the last couple of weeks because we've probably done it to death by necessity, but we've probably gone over that enough. There's a couple of updates. We're going to do our frequently asked questions, as I just said before, and then we'll have our Q&A session at the end. So just to so do you want to do this, Brian, or you?
All right, go for it.
All right. So a couple of key dates because and important because one of them is actually tomorrow, and that is around making sure that we've paid our eligible employees $1,500 for each JobKeeper fortnight for the month of April by tomorrow at the latest. So that's our final date. That was extended originally from the 30th of April last week, but it needs to happen by tomorrow. If you haven't done that or you're unsure, please touch base, because if you don't make that payment and don't ensure that minimum payment is made for each eligible employee, you may miss out on some JobKeeper for the month of April. So we don't want that happening, particularly if you're eligible. So again, touch base with us around that. 31st of May, that date again was extended last week, but it's a final date for enrolment for the JobKeeper payment and to identify and maintain the employees if you're wanting to claim for April and May. So we've still got a little bit of time if we want to claim for April going forward. But the key thing is we've got our employee nomination forms from the employees, and we've paid them that minimum amount. So we don't have to have claimed it by today. We just and be enrolled. We just need to make sure we've done that, and then we can enrol. As long as we do that before the 31st of May and claim it, we're okay. So we've got that time, and that's particularly relevant, probably more for the eligible business participants who don't have that requirement to make that payment. So this is your sole traders, partners in partnerships, trust companies. We've got the ability to claim that all through May for April if you're eligible. So we'll be in touch. We'll still be continuing to talk to people through May around this, but we do have that extra bit of time there. And we're going to make a monthly business declaration every month once we're enrolled. This is after we're enrolled in the program. So if we deem that we're eligible and we're enrolling, we need to do that via MyGov ID, and we'll cover that off again a little bit later on. But that's open now. That opened Monday. So we need to be able to jump in, confirm our eligible employees, and then make our declaration for the month of April in order to start getting some cash back. So again, just to clarify, that's not a retest of the eligibility. So as part of that process, they will ask you what your turnover for a month was for the month of April, as well as your projected turnover for May 2020. That's not a retest. They're not saying that if May is higher or lower or otherwise that you're not going to be eligible. It's more for record keeping and I think we'll go into that a bit later. But it's not for a retest. So we just wanted to make that very clear. But you will need to provide it, so keep that in mind. So that's just the key thing with that is obviously in order to claim you need to be enrolled, but you can claim from now if you are enrolled. So get enrolled if you think you're going to be eligible for the payment.
Very good. Then with the JobKeeper fortnights, this is really important. Coming back to what Joe was talking about, because the 8th of May is that final date for any top-ups that need to occur in order to be eligible back in the month of April for those first two fortnights, ending the 12th and the 26th of April. Little bit of confusion here is we also, when we move forward, when we go into May, to be eligible for the fortnight ending the 10th of May and then the fortnight ending the 24th of May, we also need to have made sure that we've made those top-ups in those particular fortnights going forward. So if there's a number of people out there trying to top up employees right now for April, don't forget you're almost today. We've only got 2 days before the end really of this fortnight in May being the 10th. We need to make sure we've done the top-ups for this fortnight as well. So don't think that the payments that you put out, say today for a top-up for April, count for this week, this fortnight as well. They don't. So you've really just got to make sure you step that out. So if somebody was needing to be topped up all the way from the start date, they essentially need to have been paid 3 lots of 1,500 before this Sunday in order to be eligible to get the April payments and then also the first fortnight in May. So really critical that we don't get confused of just worrying about April, because we're not going to get the same choice again in May. Had a few queries in regards to that one, and it can take a little bit of getting your head around, and also there can be some large top-ups if nothing has occurred for the last 4 or 5 weeks. So if you can get that, then we should be into some more smoother sailing for the rest of the the rest of the program to the end of September, with just normal weekly and fortnightly pays falling into the right areas and meeting your 750 weekly or 1,500 fortnightly minimums for all eligible employees.
Great. The only other thing I'd add there is that, of course, there is the ability, if you normally pay on a monthly basis, you normally pay your staff, and that's your pay run, you have the ability to, I forget the terminology, but it's basically fairly spread those payments out over the fortnight, the JobKeeper fortnights. So if you ordinarily pay on a monthly cycle, don't be too concerned about the fact that you're perhaps not going to be paying in the first JobKeeper fortnight, as long as you pay within that month, and you can show that you've met that 1,500 and you're spreading it across those 2 fortnights for that month, you're okay. So just be mindful of that for those that are paying monthly.
Yep.
What are we seeing? So there's a couple of little updates, or one little and one not so little. But the first one here is just particularly relevant to Victorian businesses. So it's a state government one. It's just an extension of the measures around payroll tax and also to workers' compensation. So basically, if you're in the JobKeeper scheme in Victoria, you'll be exempt from payroll tax. We already knew that for the current financial year. So refunds back to 1 July if you paid it, and then no, it's still a requirement to report, but no requirement to pay. And the work cover premium on payments for employees who are currently stood down. So basically, they're saying that if you have employees that are not working, or that they're casual and you're paying a top up, that there's not going to be any payroll tax or workers' compensation payable on those top up or pass through amounts, which is common sense because they're not working necessarily for that. It's just a pass through, but it's just more of an update just to the states bringing in line their rules with the federal rules. So they've confirmed that. We thought that might happen, but they've now confirmed that that's the case. We'd assume that other states would follow along similar lines, but we know that's the case for Victoria. Have you heard about other states, Brian? That's what I've
No, not at this stage. Just that one there.
Yeah. So if we see that, we'll provide an update around that for other ones. But yeah, you'd assume similar sort of things would take place. Modified decline in turnover test for service entities. We're going to go over that in a minute. There's been some questions around this over the last couple of weeks, or probably for the last month or so, actually, because there's been no definitive answer. There is now. We had an indicative answer last week, which we went through briefly. We've now got a definitive answer, which they were a bit sneaky about and made a fair bit more complicated than the indicative answer. So we're going to go through that very briefly, not in a lot of detail, and that's purely because it's just far too complicated. Just get lost in the translation, I think. So we're basically saying we're going to step through it, and if it applies to you, we're just going to say, please touch base, and we'll examine your individual situation, because we just don't have the time to go through it now. This is the test here, Brian. You want to step through that?
Yeah. So with the service entity test, this really revolves around business structures where you might have one entity that does the trading and another entity that employs the workers. And so there's a charge between the two entities. There could be more entities involved, but just keeping it simple for this purpose, there's an employment entity and essentially a trading entity. And what tends to happen in these sort of situations is the trading entity is the one that will suffer a downturn in its turnover due to the trading conditions, but the employment entity tends to stay the same because they're still bearing all the costs of employment. And the fee that they charge to the trading entity generally stays the same unless they're changing their workplace by a large amount of employees. So what this provision is designed to do is allow you to group together to use the trading entity's turnover to come back and try and test your eligibility. And originally, when they muted this one as coming out, we thought that's great because it's going to really assist in this area. Now that they've finally come out with the next set of conditions, it's really got very technical and very complicated, and there's very strict conditions that need to be able to test and go through that takes into account all the different operating entities within the structure in order for this one to work. So very briefly, I'll just read The test is only available whether the employer entity is a member of a tax consolidated group or a consolidatable group. So that is a group that could choose to consolidate for tax purposes that is not. And essentially a tax consolidators group is one that there's complete 100% ownership between entities and then a head entity. Don't see that all the time. In fact, not very often at all. So that's a very hard test. And then there's also a GST grouping test, of which that one isn't as stringent with the rules to form a GST group. But the feedback we're getting from some of the bigger accounting firms is that a lot of GST groups that are currently formed at the moment are technically outside the rules of the ATO's GST grouping provisions as it stands. So they're saying if you're trying to rely on the way that things have been put together from a grouping provision and think that you can get that and then get JobKeeper, they're suggesting that you're leaving yourself pretty wide open for the ATO to look at that and say, well, really, we're not sure that you are eligible, and they'll ask for the money back. So they're saying be very careful for this. The mail they're giving us at the moment also is if you were to turn around and say, well, I'm not in a GST group at present, but let's put a GST group in place in order to pass the test so that we can get the service entity modified tests. They're saying that would be something that you've done purely for JobKeeper, and they would strip that away under the integrity rules. And once again, your eligibility disappears and you're talking fines and penalties. So I don't think I'll get into that any further apart from very technical area, very stringent. If you do have service entities and it applies to you, I'd say contact us and we can start to apply it to your specific conditions. Anything else you want to add to that one, Joe?
No, I think that's that's the bit they've added is around the consolidated bits and the GST groups that wasn't in the original rules and has made it incredibly more, much more complex. The original rules look very. The indication as to the rule change looked very simple, but the devil is always in the detail, as they say. So, and it certainly was in this case. So. Nothing further to add. I think if we've got it, we've probably been talking to clients about them anyway that have got them because there's been some I suppose confusion around it and lack of clarity. So again, we'll be talking to you, but feel free to reach out. It's it's very much case by case.
Yep.
All right. Moving on to this MyGov and MyGov ID. We covered this off briefly last week. There's some notes in the Google Drive, but we just wanted to be clear around this because for a couple of reasons. Primarily, and why it's linked to within this presentation is because it allows having access to MyGov ID, and then the business portal allows you to do your monthly claims for JobKeeper in a very quick and efficient way, and allows you to do it yourself. So what MyGov ID has actually replaced is the old AusKey system, which is no longer available. We can't use that anymore. So if you were using that and you're trying to get onto your business portal, you probably have noticed as of a month or so ago that you can't do that anymore, and you're required to set up this MyGov ID. It's not to be confused with MyGov. They're two very different things. So MyGov is the personal one that allows you to link to government services, which some people will have and others won't, and that's personal. That's completely separate off to the side. MyGov ID is the thing that allows you to access government online services. So business portal, ABR, those sort of business services that the government runs, and it's necessary now if you want to get onto your business portal and be able to lodge BAS for yourself, for instance, or lodge claims for JobKeeper, check portal accounts or ATO accounts and balances owing and all that sort of thing. You're required to have it. So have a look at the notes. It's a pretty straightforward process to go through. There's two websites within the notes. There's the MyGov ID website itself, and then there's the Relationship Authorization Manager, or RAM, that you've set up for your business, and then you can invite yourself once you've got a MyGov ID or other people that lodge on your behalf or that need access to that. It makes it a lot simpler to bring other people into it. So have a look at that. we'd recommend you set it up anyway, regardless if you're going to do JobKeeper claims yourself. You're going to need it at some stage in the future, so go and get it set up now. It's just following the instructions on the website. Very straightforward.
And you did this yourself for one of yours just this week, Joe, so that all went pretty smoothly?
I did, yeah. I just for an organisation I do some volunteer work for, and the business manager required access to the portal, business portal. Hadn't had in the past used AusKey, and yeah, so I had to set it up from the point of view of a client, and it was very straightforward to do. So yeah, I didn't run into any dramas, and we've been able to link up the business manager very quickly and simply. So yeah, I can personally say if it's, and I'm no tech expert by any means, Brian will attest to that. But yeah, stepping through that was very easy.
Yep, good. No, that was the feedback we're looking for, because these things can look a bit daunting at times, and once you get into it, yeah, there's a way through, and there's people to ring, all that kind of stuff as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the JobKeeper side of it. We've got 3 steps we're going to step through now. One is enrolling. Secondly is confirming our eligible employees, and thirdly is doing our first claim and claiming back. So that's claiming back of the payment from the government for our eligible employees. So Brian, do you want to start with the enrolling bit?
Yeah, so first of all, enrolling, and most of us have probably been and done this part already, but the enrolling, we just log into that business portal using the MyGov ID, as Joe was talking about, or otherwise we'd be doing it for you, but this is probably trying to step you out so you can go and do this yourselves. There'll be a screen that pops up that selects step 1, that we enrol for the JobKeeper wage subsidies. And then we fill in the JobKeeper enrolment form by confirming the required fields. So there's some declarations and things in there that you're doing at that stage, and choosing which month I think you're entitled to.
Yep.
Putting in some bank account details for where you want the money to go into, and also number of employees that you're going to be looking to have eligible, and also whether you're going to be declaring an eligible business participant or not. I think they were the only ones that were really in that first.
Yeah, I think it asks questions at the start about if it determines your eligibility or your turnover requirements by asking if you're a charity, or also if you're turning over $1 billion. So for most people, that's going to be no and no. Then you move through to those other questions, as Brian said. So it's pretty straightforward. As it says on the slide here, you can't save it. You can't save that form and come back to it later. So I know the first time I did it, I actually had to just close it down and go back into it because I didn't have all the information I needed in order to be able to complete it. I had to go back to the client and ask for their bank details to fill that in. And once you submit it, it's with the ATO. The only way to correct it is to actually call them and manually correct it over the phone, which is a bit of a pain in the backside. So if you can avoid getting that, or if you can try to take the time, answer those few questions as accurately as you can, and just check over it before you submit it, that would be great.
Do we have a copy of those questions in the slides in the handouts, Joe, or at all?
I think we can. Amy and I were looking at them earlier. I think we can probably. We've got some later on the next steps, but we can certainly put some of those in the. We could add them to the handout section, I think, in Google Drive if we haven't already. Amy, if we haven't, can we just put that on the list and we'll deal with that?
Not, I think we can put a link into the ATO and it steps through a few of those anyway. So that might be where we can do that. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, that's right. So as Brian said, if you're doing that yourself, that's fine. If you've got any questions, just ask us. More than happy to help with any of that or do it for you. Just let us know what you'd like there. But as we said, it is relatively straightforward once you know the information.
Yep.
So the next step is the eligible employees and eligible employee declaration. So again, this is in the same spot in the portal, in the business portal. So we're just going into the COVID screen, and we've already enrolled by this stage, and we're just looking at this to say, okay, these are my employees that I've got that are eligible for the JobKeeper program, and they can be submitted to the ATO in a number of ways. We haven't gone through what they are here, other than to say that they can be done in your payroll software by using single touch payroll. So if you nominate certainly in Zero Mob and QuickBooks, there's been various challenges with some of those programs, but they've all got a means to add your employees on a JobKeeper section in their software, and then when you send your single touch payroll to the ATO, it will provide that information to the ATO at that point in time. So that's one way to get your employees in there. If you don't have single touch payroll, or you have more than a certain number of employees, which is getting into bigger businesses, you may have to manually provide the ATO your employees. But just, I suppose, select the one that's right for you. For most people, be on single touch payroll. If you've done your payments and you've submitted your single touch payroll, that'll be sorted out, and it'll be pretty straightforward. The other thing with this one is you only need to do it. You need to confirm your eligible employees every month after this when you're doing your business declaration, but you only need to do this step once, this first bit. So this step 2. After this month ongoing, that'll just be part of doing the declaration. So you'll just be confirming your employees at that point in time.
Yep. Probably an important part just in that one also, Joe, is the difference between eligible employees and an eligible business participant.
Yes. Yeah.
There's various amounts of confusion over that one out there. So you really need to know whether you as a business owner are eligible either under a JobKeeper employee side of things, or you're going to be eligible under an eligible business participant, or whether you're just not eligible at all. So it's reasonably tricky sometimes to get a bit confused, but if you're going to be an eligible business participant, you cannot be an employee of that entity, or you can't be an employee anywhere else unless it's only on a casual basis. So, and it's something that's very easy for the ATO, I suppose, from the tracking mechanism, because when you put yourself in as that eligible business participant, your tax file number and everything else is loaded up against you. So it's very easy from that point of view. The only other thing with that is with the business eligible participant, there's still some confusion over there. You do need to be an individual. So if you're a partnership and you're not individual partners in a partnership, then you can't go and nominate an individual who's a director of a company, of a trustee, of a partnership, those sorts of things. It doesn't work that way. So pretty strict on the regime of how that works. So if you're thinking that's the way that you're going to get in there, then just need to step back, have another look, possibly talk to us to make sure that you're coming at the right direction, whether you're an employee or an eligible business participant, or possibly neither.
Yep. Making a monthly business declaration, step 3. So this is the one that will continue to happen on a monthly basis on the way through once you're in the system. So we do it in the same spot on the business portal, and we go to step 3, make a monthly business declaration. I think if we go to the next slide, so this is what you see. This is the screen you see when we're talking about this step here, where it talks about view the COVID-19 screen. This is the COVID-19 screen. This is what you see when you click on there. And I think it's under, is it My Business or Business or something on the far right side of your portal, your business portal. And you just go down there, it says JobKeeper enroll. And that's where you click on. So this is what you'll see when you click there. We can see here this person has enrolled. That's step 1, so there's a big tick there. So they've gone on and enrolled. They're at step 2 now, which is identify and maintain your eligible employees. So you can see their required actions. If you're a business using STP or payroll software with JobKeeper functionality, ensure your eligible employees are identified and lodged via the software. So that's what we were talking about before. So again, if you just do it in the software and hit file your single touch payroll, you're okay. If you're a business that doesn't have single touch enabled payroll with JobKeeper functionality and has more than 40 employees, ensure eligible employees are identified and lodged via a file transfer. So that's the other method you can use to get that in there. All other businesses outside of that, visit help. So obviously there's if you're outside of that, click on that and it'll tell you what to do. Again, that step's you're only going to need to do that one. Identify the eligible employees once. That'll be done, and then that'll be done as part of step 3 going forward, because you'll just be confirming that those same eligible employees are still the same ones for the months following. If some drop off, you'll need to remove them. This is and this is going into the employee details section. So when you go into that section about nominating your employees, this is what you'll see. So eligible employees for the JobKeeper fortnight, and again, it just goes over to identify those employees. It just covers back over those same points that we just went through before, and it just goes through here your number of eligible employees for each JobKeeper fortnight. This is for the 2 first fortnights in April. We can see there that they've pre-filled, and you can edit those if you need to, if they've been done incorrectly. To be honest, I know Brian, you may have a different. To be honest, I was talking to Rihanna earlier today. I think she was saying she's had one experience where a client had to edit those numbers to increase them because they missed a couple of eligible employees on their first sweep. We're yet to see if that is actually going to work, or whether there's going to be any further requirements from the ATO, or whether they're just going to be paid for those extra 2. But there is the ability to edit those if you've got those numbers incorrect in your initial application, or in your enrolment, or your single touch payroll. You just need to update that, obviously, in your system to move forward. Have you had any situations where you've had to update those?
Haven't had any update ones at this stage, but are seeing, I suppose, a few different things as far as employees' names popping up and then having to put some more codes against those, as though it was reconfirming what was in single touch payroll anyway. But then also adding other employees that weren't a part of single touch payroll, because obviously not everyone always makes it in there. So therefore, there's that ability to add some extra in. So I know on one that I did where there was only, say, 8 showing up on single touch payroll, but we entered the number 10 in for eligible employees. It was basically suggesting you're needing to add some more employees into the eligibility side of things. So I'm assuming each time we do come in that we will have that ability to edit and update for others that may come back into eligibility as we go through. It's not just about those ones being there all the way through that are there now, but others may come back that, for instance, are currently away on paid parental leave, so therefore they're not eligible. But once they come off that, they come back into the system. So the single touch payroll may bring that data through, may need to add it in manually.
Yeah, good point. It's not just drop off. There's some that get added back in, some circumstances where that happens. So, definitely. Okay, well, look, that probably covers off all we really needed to, because that's the key part of what's going on now, enrolling and also claiming. So, again, any of that stuff, we stepped through that pretty quickly, but any of that stuff, while you're doing it, or if you have any questions around it, please don't hesitate to yell out. We're happy to help. And keeping in mind, once we've done a couple of those, we've got one. This is our first one this month, and then we'll be doing them monthly, so we should get pretty good at them as we step through that.
Yep.
So this is our section now on our frequently asked questions. So we've got a number of questions here that, again, we're hearing on a regular basis, and that we just felt needed to be clarified. Some of these we covered off last week, but we're just going to go through again just to get clear on that. Sorry, it's a phone call coming through there. And then we're also going to answer any other questions that have come through over the period of time as well. So stepping through, we just wanted to clarify. We actually had a question last week from Bronwyn, and we actually got the answer wrong in our answer. Brian and I sort of stepped through it very briefly, and where we got to was that no, we thought that the person would be eligible. It turns out afterwards when we had a bit of a read, and we touched base with Bronwyn to correct this last week immediately, but it turns out, getting down to the technical detail, that this person's actually not eligible. So I just thought we'd step through that very, very briefly, just to clarify that. So the question was: a sole trader in business less than 12 months, ABN registered before March, not registered for GST, tax return for last year doesn't show business income and obviously doesn't need to lodge BAS. Are they eligible for JobKeeper? We said yes because we stepped through each of those things and we thought that all sounds okay. They've lodged a tax return. They're not registered for GST. That's okay. You don't need to be. ABN registered before March. That's good. That's perfect. They've been in business less than 12 months, so they could use the alternative test. Doesn't lodge BAS because they're not registered. Again, that's fine. So we got to the point of, okay, well, that's okay. The thing we missed was that, and thanks for your detail in your question, Bronwyn, because it was tax return for last year doesn't show any business income. That's the kicker here, is that if there had been business income in the 2019 tax return, the person would have been eligible. And our understanding is it would have only needed to be $1 of business income or a very minimal amount of business income, but it doesn't, because that tax return does not show any business income. That's not an eligible entity to be able to claim JobKeeper for an eligible business participant. So the requirements around that are that the 2019 return needs to be lodged by a certain date, and it needs to have business income, or you need to have lodged BAS after a certain date, 1 July 2018 from memory. So a lot of businesses that are GST registered, they'll just pass that one. That's no problem. The challenge with this one was that this client is not GST registered, so there's no requirement to lodge BAS. And unfortunately, obviously didn't know about any of this when they lodged their tax return, and didn't have any income. So the reality is that's just how it fell. So unfortunately, they'll fall out of that system and won't be eligible under the current rules. So I just wanted to clarify that. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so apologies for that one, Bronwyn, but we thought that, there was a very high likelihood that one was going to be all good. But obviously Joe's gut feel had him saying, there's some more I need to find out about this one. So, obviously done some more work on it, and unfortunately not the response you're looking for, but now we understand exactly where this one sits.
Yeah, spot on. And a big thank. I should thank Rihanna for that as well, because I think she was listening to the webinar and she put a link in there around that, which led me to go and have a read of that. So and clarify further. So it's just that that one little technical point. It's unfortunately it misses out. So as Brian said, not the answer we're looking for, but that's the answer. All right, Brian, this first one. What kind of businesses can apply for JobKeeper? I think we're referring to here eligible business participants.
Eligible business participants. So this is getting back to the ones that have suffered the 30% downturn in turnover, been in business. I suppose, I don't have those ones specifically in front of me there, Joe.
Yep. So obviously we've got your different entities that we typically trade under. So we've got your sole trader partnership, trust and company, and I suppose when we're talking about eligible business participants, we're just coming back to the individuals, as Brian mentioned before. We need an individual to be in a particular position to be able to claim for this. So obviously a sole trader. A sole trader, as long as they meet the 30% decline in turnover test, assuming they're not turning over $1 billion, of course, but a 30% decline in turnover test, you're typically fine, because a sole trader is just an individual person. So you meet that test, you're an individual real person, so you're okay. Partnership. Again, the challenge that Brian identified earlier was that if we've got a partnership of entities that are not individuals, so if we've got a partnership of trusts, that's quite a common structure, a partnership of companies, those companies or directors of those companies, shareholders or beneficiaries of those trusts are not eligible for JobKeeper as eligible business participants. You need to be an individual, and only one of those individuals for any entity is allowable. So two individual partners, only one of them is eligible as an eligible business participant. Trust, same thing. You need to be an adult beneficiary of a trust, of a discretionary trust. A unit trust needs to be an individual unit holder. So if we've got a discretionary trust holding units, or a company holding units in a unit trust, that entity won't have an eligible business participant, more than likely. And then the company one, we need to have an adult shareholder or an adult or a director, and either of those are eligible business participants for the purposes of JobKeeper. So just to be clear, we need to be an individual, and only one per entity. Only one per entity.
Yep.
Okay, Brian, do I need to have been affected by COVID-19 directly in order to claim JobKeeper?
No, you do not. It just comes back to the other eligibility rules, which is more just needing to pass that 30% downturn in your turnover as a small regular business, most of our businesses. So if you can pass one of those test periods between the comparisons and the way that works, then you are eligible to claim, as long as you've then got eligible employees and you meet all those other tests on the way through. So it doesn't need to be COVID-19 directly related in order to be eligible.
Yep, great. And the ATO are specific about this. We're not. The ATO specifically said it does not need to be COVID-19 related to be eligible. You just need to pass those turnover tests. So there'll be some people that think, look, I'm trading business as usual. Why would I look at this? Well, we're recommending every business have a look at this, because it may well be that you just had a particularly good month in April, May, or at some stage last year, and that you fall in under the 30% reduction in turnover for the test period. So it's set up to you, of course, whether you claim it or not, but you may have the ability to do so. So we're just asking all of our business owners to just have a bit of a look at the data. We've sent that spreadsheet out a number of times, that you've got access to that. Fill it in. If it shows that you're eligible, well, talk to us. As you said, you don't have to, but you've got the option.
Just following that, Joe, that's really critical. It's just let the data do the talking. It gives us the answer, and we use a gut feel as to what happened last year, and probably expecting, especially in the farming and agricultural side of things, it's there was a good season, bad season. It only takes the money to drop into your bank on the 1st of the month versus the 30th of the month, and that can make the difference of your eligibility. So very much worthwhile. Just grab that spreadsheet, fill in the data, and then have a look, and you might be surprised at what comes back out of it.
Absolutely. In fact, I had one last week where where that exact thing has happened with a primary production business, and they're eligible to claim it for a couple of their ongoing employees. Haven't been directly impacted, and hadn't even considered it, to be honest. So it's just one of those things. Don't assume you're not eligible. Just as Brian said, do the numbers and then let it tell you if you're eligible or not.
Yep.
Can a business apply for JobKeeper if I experience a downturn in the future? So this is more aimed at, okay, well, what if I don't pass tests now, or if I haven't had a downturn now, or I can't see right now that I'm going to have a downturn. Can I apply in the future if a downturn happens? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, you can. And you can skip over it. We've got a few clients that we're not going to claim in April because they haven't had that downturn. They're going to start claiming in May because that's more than likely when the downturn is going to hit them. They'll pass the tests, or maybe even wait to June. It depends, and you can wait all the way through. Just keep in mind, we have the ability for April to claim April. We can either test the months of March or April, which is now both actuals. So we know March, our basic test says March 2020 versus March 2019, April 20 versus April 19. We also got the ability to claim April if we think our quarter ended 30 June 2020 is going to be 30% down, is forecasted to be 30% down than the June quarter in 2019. So that's the forecasting side of it. And I think, Brian, I was talking to you this morning, you've done that with a few clients. So there's that ability to do that, to say that, well, look, we may not have had downturns in April and May, but we know we're going to just go straight off a cliff in June. So we're not going to have that income coming in, and therefore we've got the ability to claim it from back right at the start. So just keep that one in mind. If you're not, or if you don't think you're not comfortable forecasting, or you're not sure, you can wait and you can claim it later when you're going to be eligible for it. But we'll be there all the way through.
Yep.
Have you got anything further to add there, Brian? Or
it was probably most people I'm talking to are probably struggling most with predicting out what July, August, September look like. So it is comforting to know, well, that's okay if things do turn bad at that point in time, because there's a lag in what's going on, then there is the ability to jump on to what's actually happening at that point in time.
Yep.
So it's still there. But if you're unsure at the moment, as said Joe, with June could be a horror month, but I've had some good ones yet, so I'll hang on till June and I'll just look at June. They're the ones where you'd want to say, well, maybe for the quarter you are eligible. So I've really put the numbers in, talk to us, so that we can, I suppose, categorically say, yeah, no, put it away. April and May are not going to be any good for you. You'll be starting in June at the absolute earliest type thing. At least then you can stop just having it going around in your head continually. Could I maybe, what's it look like? Clean it up.
Why do I need to get my employees to fill out a nomination notice? So this is a key part of this is that you are acknowledging that the business is, so the employer acknowledges that the business meets the turnover test or the declining turnover test and is eligible. The employees they're given the ability to nominate as an eligible employee, but they have to make a declaration around their eligibility as well. So there's joint liability here. So there's the employee has to actually say, yes, I pass all those things, the age, the residency, all those being employed at a certain time, being employed as a permanent staff member, all those things. We've then got to hold on to those for 5 years. The ATO instructed us to hold on to it for 5 years. It's why do you need to? It gives the employees responsibility for saying that they've nominated, and B, you actually require them on hand in order to be eligible. That's one of the tests. In order to be eligible to claim it back, you need to have these back from your eligible employees. So, and to hold them on file. What we're offering with this too, by the way, is because there's that requirement to hold them for 5 years, you don't have to take us up on this, but if you'd like to send them through to us on a PDF, on an email or something, we're happy to retain them on our file for you as well, just so you've got a backup there. We're happy to have that information for you. So just keep that in mind. But you do need to absolutely need to have an employee nomination notice for every eligible employee that you've got under your JobKeeper for your business.
And this will be even more critical, Joe, for any employees that you're having to do a top-up for, because if you don't have a nomination notice back from them, you can't claim from the government. So you're even further out of pocket if you've topped them up. So make sure you get those done. And also don't forget, if you are filling in one or you're an eligible business participant, there's a separate form that you actually need to sign as a partner in a partnership, adult beneficiary, director or a shareholder, that's separate to the employee one. So you need to sign that one, and it's for the same thing, making those declarations that you're actually eligible to receive that money.
Yep. How often do I declare? Do you do this or do I? Okay, so we'll just answer this one pretty quickly. It's the clue's in the name. It's a monthly business declaration, so we do it at the start of every month, following the one we're claiming for. So we're doing the one for April, we're claiming it in May, so on and so forth, all the way through. The last one will be done in October for September's fortnight. So how often do you declare and do that process? It's once a month. Do you do this or do I? We're happy to assist with that. If you would like us to and engage us to do that. Conversely, that's why we're putting out there about the MyGov ID. You're very simply and easily able to set it up yourself so that you can lodge that application or that declaration yourself at the start of every month following. And we'd recommend you do that. Again, more than happy to assist if you've got questions while you're doing it, but it just means that you've got control over that, and it's 100% in your court to lodge that in a timely manner. When we say a timely manner too, I think it's one of the other questions that's got to be, we've got till the 31st for this month, but every month following, we've got to lodge our information within 7 days at the end of the month. So we've got, and who knows what they're going to do with that, as far as they may extend the timeframes, but the indication at the moment is within 7 days. Certainly the GST turnover actual versus and projected will have to be provided to the ATO within that timeframe. And that's coming onto this. Why are they asking for May projection in the April declaration? And how do I do this? I'm assuming that means how do I calculate this? Brian, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so essentially they're not trying to do a retest of your eligibility. So please put that one aside, because that's a big concern for everyone, or a lot of people that I talk to at the moment. It's purely for the space of gathering data for the government and Treasury. So this is a big package, a lot of money that's being put out there, and it's designed to try and get specific results. So it's an investment they're making, and they're trying to track what that return looks like. So they want to know, when putting in, the projections at this stage, what's your May going to look like? What was April actually? And what they'll be looking for then is, when we turn around in the first week of June, is what did your May actually do? So if you predicted maybe a $200,000 turnover in May and you ended up with a 250, then they'll see that as a positive thing for the space of your business. And remember, they're collecting data from thousands and thousands of businesses. There's something like 450,000 businesses registered for JobKeeper, and it's very industry specific, so they can really narrow down where they think they're making a real difference in the economy by making this injection of money, and possibly what they could be doing not the right way for anything that they need to do into the future. So it's not as though they're planning for the next pandemic here, but they're trying to say, are we getting probably even just bang for their buck? Are they making things happen? Are we falling into holes in certain areas? And possibly gives them a good insight into the next stage when we come out of this, because there'll still be more restructuring, coming back together type packages that will need to happen. It might give them an insight into the types of industries and where they may need to focus those efforts on at that point in time.
Yep. And that whole one about how do I do this? It's really your April or your actuals for the month previous. That's obviously fairly straightforward because it is what it is. But how do I do this for the forecasting one? It's just got to be a reasonable forecast. We've just got to look at it and say, okay, what do we think we're going to turn over in May or in the month following? Put that in. As Brian said, if you get it wrong, that's not a big deal. They're more just sort of collecting information there. So just get it as close as you can, and that's fine. For some people, it'll be very straightforward. If you're not trading, it's just going to be zero. That's fine, but others will be unsure. So just near enough is fine.
Yeah, I would just add to that on that, Joe. When we get to this, it's just don't overthink that question.
Yeah.
What do you think is more likely to happen than not, and put that number in there. That's different from when we were trying to test eligibility earlier on. It's not to do with that. So it's just, what are the conditions for the next month look like? What is my invoicing or sales most likely to be? And go from there.
Yep. How long after making my monthly declaration will I receive my JobKeeper payment? Well, we can answer that now, because we know that some of them that are made. So this opened Monday, the declarations. And we know that some of those have already been paid now. So some businesses are actually starting to receive the JobKeeper funds from applications that were made on Monday. So what we got to 3 days that took. Now, that's not a guarantee to say that all of them are going to go that quickly, but they've sort of said at latest, certainly for these initial ones, it would be by the middle of the month. So we're talking probably the 14th or 15th of May, as long as you obviously lodged your application or your declaration, I should say. So in order for them to pay you, you need to tell them that you want to be paid. And in order to do that, you need to be enrolled. So all those steps need to take place. But by the look of it, they're being fairly speedy, as they should be, with payments of the money back to the businesses.
Well, that's great, Joe. If it's flowing back that quickly, that gives a lot of hope for everyone else that's been putting their applications in already to hopefully see what's coming through. And I can confirm that, a client of mine also has got their money today from putting in their application on Monday. So that's awesome.
So I did read somewhere, I'll do that as soon as you can. I did read somewhere at some stage last night about the later you leave that, potentially the longer it's going to take because of that 7-day thing. So if you can have it done by sort of this week, ideally that would be great. But yeah, it looks like it's happening pretty quickly. So that's the gist of that, which is good. What's the date I need to lodge my declaration by? That's what we just went through, which is HR at the moment are saying by the 7th day of the month following. So For May's payment that you're lodging in June, that will be requiring lodgement by the 7th of June at this stage. Now, who knows what's going to happen with the extension of dates and those sort of things, but I would be assuming, and I would be operating on the assumption that we need to have that done within the first 7 days. So, again, the requirement for having access to my Gov ID and being able to do that nice and quickly is paramount. So please go and do that. We probably covered this one off before, Brian. Do I need to retest my turnover every month?
Yep, definitely not. Let's not do that. It's too anxious at times when it was getting done the first time. So once you're done and dusted, you're in, put it aside. There is no retesting that needs to happen.
All I would absolutely agree. All I would say there is that just be mindful. The ATO have been they've been very clear with what they're requiring here with that initial test. Just make sure you keep the information that you've used or a calculation somewhere. It doesn't need to be anything too major, but just as to how you've got to the fact that you're eligible in the first place. Might only just be a comparison, April versus April last year out of your bookkeeping program or something like that. But it's just got to show that, this is how I worked it out and I was eligible at that time. So just be mindful of that. Don't need a big manila folder full of documents, but just keep a record of how you decided that you were eligible at that point in time. And if we've done that for you, we will certainly be keeping that on file. And
that's that spreadsheet we keep talking about, Joe. Forms a great starting document for that. And so, I wouldn't be going and updating that document once it's done, put it to the side, because, it's not a matter of trying to retest some of those projections on the way through. It's what it was at the point in time that we were sat down and completed.
Yep. So Brian answered this one before, probably. What if my pay cycles do not correspond with JobKeeper fortnights? Do I need to change? So we sort of answered that before. If you're on monthly, as long as you pay them the minimum in that month and it's spread out, it can be evenly spread, and you're making that minimum payment, or you're paying them during the JobKeeper fortnight. At some stage, you're okay on that front.
Yep. Please don't change your payroll cycles. It sounds like far too much trouble for that.
Yeah, that's right. So this one, I paid some 16 and 17-year-olds before the new rules, excluding full-time students of this age. Before the new rules excluded the full-time students of this age, can I still claim back what I paid them? Excuse me. Yes, you can for April, but the government have said after April they will no longer be eligible, so you will not be able to claim back amounts topped up or paid to those particular people. So 16 and 17-year-old full-time students who are not financially independent will not be eligible for JobKeeper after the first 2 fortnights. So you can continue to pay them if they're an employee, the casuals and that sort of thing. Continue to pay them as you normally would. It's just a waste of time paying them a top up, because you're not going to get reimbursed for that after the April month. What happens if my predicted fall in turnover is incorrect? So I suppose this question's aimed at if I've projected my turnover for June quarter and I am wrong, and we get to the June actual and I'm slightly off. What happens? Particularly if I'm not quite down by 30%. Brian, what's the case there?
Yeah, so we haven't heard a lot of new information in regards to this over the last week or so, but originally the examples that were being shown that if you were predicting a 30% or above downturn and you got there and it was maybe at only 28, 27, then the talk was that was a low risk. More than likely that would all be okay. But they would be really coming back and relying upon how did you come up with those predictions in the first place. So if you didn't have paperwork in place, maybe a budget, cash flow, different documentation that you put together to come up with that, so that they could fall back to what would a reasonable person have done, more likely than not more likely, then that's when they might turn around and, could be a very persuading factor in them saying, well, we don't believe you were entitled to it, so therefore you would need to be paying it back. So I'd make sure that you've got that kind of data in place. And if this does actually happen, I would turn around and probably make a call to us very quickly at that point in time, and we'd discuss the options, there's always that ability to pull out and not go any further forward, or actually possibly even talk to the ATO or flag our position or reword what we think it is from there. It's a bit like, okay, let's draw a line in the sand. Where are we now? What's it look like? And now make another judgment call moving forward from there.
That's right, and there, no doubt there'll be more come out about this on the way through as we get closer to the 30 June. When that that's the line in the sand as to when the actual versus budget's going to come into play. So there'll be more that will come out about it. But suffice to say that if you are not, if you get that estimate wrong and you're slightly less than 30%, or you don't quite meet that requirement, the indication, as Brian said at the moment, is that they're not going to penalise you. They're not probably not even going to ask for it back, as long as your numbers and your forecasting was reasonable. So we'll keep an eye on that. But as Brian said, we'll just keep an eye on it all the way through. And please touch base if you're feeling concerned about that. What happens if my business has just started or has inconsistent income? What test can I use? That's in reference to the alternative turnover test. If either of your, just in the interest of time, we might step through this quickly. If your business does meet either of those ones, or it doesn't meet a basic test, and you want to look at those alternative tests, please reach out. We'll step through those. They're a little bit more complicated, so it's a bit of a case-by-case basis. My apprenticeship support payment hasn't been received yet. What should I do? So this is more referring back to one of the original apprenticeship rebates or amounts for 50% of your employees' wages up to apprentice wages up to a certain point. If you haven't received that yet, I would touch base with the body that you use to that your managers, your apprentice, because that's who a lot of them have been lodged through, and they will be able to advise you on that, because certainly seeing some of those being paid back a little while ago. But there is also, and I've had a number of clients that have come to me and said that it's stalled. So please get back in touch with whoever that body is. So that might be a CVGT or a Becky around Shepparton to get that moving.
Just on that, Joe, Reed just posted a little thing in the chat there about there's been some technical errors and haven't been processed correctly. So they can manually push it through if all the criteria is met and you're eligible for the payment. So much like you were saying, get in contact with those providers and chase it up from there. So thanks, Reed, for that little bit of extra stuff there.
Excellent.
Okay.
We've got a couple of questions here. One from, we only got one from Tani. Thanks for your question. We'll answer that, Tani, and Rihanna's. Rihanna's answered that one, so thanks for that, Rihanna. Okay. Tani, would it be correct that for the JobKeeper eligibility turnover test, a trust distribution would not be included in the GST turnover? Thoughts on that, Brian?
My initial thought on that one, Joe, and just thinking back to Bronwyn last week and initial thoughts, but my initial thoughts is that it would not be included, but I'd like to double check that one, because certainly a distribution itself certainly doesn't have GST on it, but for the talk of a revenue side of things, but I'm leaning towards that one wouldn't be included in your GST turnover.
I agree. I'm leaning the same way. But Tony, we can have a chat about that if you like.
Perfect. Easy.
I think, well, our frequently asked questions must have covered the questions that everyone else had, because we haven't got any others here that I can see, which is great. Again, if you have any questions on the way through during the week, please don't hesitate to yell out. Happy to help out. Just a quick one. We're going to take a short break, given that we think now the updates, and we live to be proven wrong here, but we think now the updates and the any new stuff around this JobKeeper program is probably going to slow down. Any other subsidies are going to slow down a little bit now. So we're going to have a break for next week. We're just going to let people and ourselves just take a breath, get our JobKeeper applications and declarations done, hopefully the money back in the bank for those, and then after that we'll come back and provide an update in the fortnight following. So that will be back on the 21st of May. And we'll provide any updates or any other things we're seeing at that point in time. And then from then on, we'll seek some feedback and some thoughts around that. But we're looking to continue to run these webinars for our clients. I think feedback has been very valuable. Hopefully, it won't be so much talking about JobKeeper and those other things. We get to talk about something else. But that's what the feedback will be around. We're more than happy to continue to run them on a regular basis. It might be on a monthly basis, for instance, and provide our clients information about topics that are relevant or interesting to them. So we'll have a break again. We'll have a break next week. Leave you to it. Again, contact us if you have any questions about the claiming process, enrolling, any of that for JobKeeper, and we'll catch up again in a fortnight's time from now. Anything to add, Brian?
Yeah, no, that's about it, Joe. It's been a pleasure to come each week and try and provide some information and value to help keep some calmness out there amongst our clients that are struggling with putting all this, I suppose, eligibility stuff together. So to try and assist through that has been awesome. So yeah, thanks for your assistance on the way through, Joe. Couldn't have done it without you, and certainly Amy pulling all those levers in the background and making this all come together with probably less and less information from Joe and I each week. So certainly the pressure forming in the background. But it's been great to turn up, and to have a week off will be good. Please keep some questions and things coming in though, if need be, because we're not going away. Just the format changes for a week, and we'll come back and let's see what happens over the next 2 weeks.
Great. Thanks to you, Brian, too, and to Amy. Support that entirely. And again, to our team who have been helping us enormously with getting in touch with clients and helping clients out as well. We should just say, if there are any major updates that we're not foreseeing that come through, please keep an eye out for our Facebook page, because Amy will post updates as they occur on there. So if there's anything that comes through, that you'll be notified via Facebook. All right, we might leave it there. I think we're getting closer and closer to the hour mark every week. So thanks for your time. Again, a copy will be sent out. Any questions, yell out, and we'll see you in a fortnight.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.